the care and the treatment that they deserve.
Question number 12, Chris Hipkins.
Mr Speaker, my question is to the Minister of Education and asks, does her Associate Minister's handling of his delegated responsibility for Novopay give her confidence in his ability to fulfil his other duties?
The Honourable Craig Foss.
Mr Speaker.
The Honourable Craig Foss.
Mr Speaker, on behalf of the Minister of Education, yes, I have full confidence in the Associate Minister's ability to fulfil his other duties. I think he has done a good job of a hard job.
Chris Hipkins.
Supplementary question, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, is she satisfied that Craig Foss carried out proper oversight of Novopay's implementation and that he fully considered all of the risks when deciding that Novopay should go live on the 20th of August? If so, why?
The Honourable Craig Foss.
On behalf of the Minister of Education, yes.
Point of order, Mr Speaker.
Point of order, Chris Hipkins.
Mr Speaker, I did ask him if so, why, and it's not an unreasonable question to expect an answer to.
Well, it is a second part to the question. It is a supplementary question, and she isn't obliged to answer both parts. Chris Hipkins.
Supplementary question, Mr Speaker, why?
The Honourable Craig Foss.
Mr Speaker, on behalf of the Minister of Education, as the Associate Minister noted in the House yesterday, he took advice and recommendations from the Ministry of Education and the Novopay Board.
Supplementary question, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, has she seen the comment this morning from the Ministry of Education's group manager who said that, quote, there were functions of the system that simply weren't working when it went live, end quote? If so, why does she have confidence in Craig Foss's decision to sign off on the implementation?
The Honourable Craig Foss.
On behalf of the Minister of Education, I can't say if she's aware of that particular comment or not.
Point of order, Mr.
Point
Speaker.
of order, Chris Hipkins.
Mr Speaker, the question was on notice. I appreciate that the Minister's answering on behalf of another Minister, but it's not unreasonable to expect that he would prepare and have that answer.
Well, point of order has been raised. The dilemma is that in the absence of the Minister, that I guess the Associate Minister can't, if he hasn't been able to get hold of her, tell the House whether or not she has heard that comment this morning that the member raised. And that's why I think the House has to accept the Minister's answer in that regard. Chris
Supplementary question, Mr Speaker. Does she believe that the role of ministers is to simply sign off whatever recommendations officials present to them? Or does the role extend to questioning that advice and making sure officials have done their jobs properly? If so, does she believe that this government has executed that responsibility appropriately in signing off on the implementation of Novopay before the results of system testing were even known?
The Honourable Craig
Speaker,
Foss.
on behalf of the Minister of Education, I have full confidence in the Associate Minister's ability to do and continue to do a good job of a hard job regarding Novopay.
Well, order on this occasion. I think I can assist the Honourable Member. I don't think that answer answered any part of the question. So I invite the member to repeat his question, Chris Hipkins.
Mr Speaker, does she believe that the role of ministers is to simply sign off whatever recommendations officials present to them? Or does their role extend to questioning that advice and making sure officials have done their jobs properly? If so, does she believe that this government has executed that responsibility appropriately in signing off the implementation of Novopay before the results of the system testing were even known?
The Honourable Craig Foss.
Mr Speaker, no.
Supplementary question, Mr Speaker.
I take it. If the member was just said no, I take it was the first part of the question. The answer was no.
Do I have to qualify that?
So I think if the member is going, the minister's only going to answer one part.
He asked me three.
If the minister's going to answer one part of a question, you've got to indicate which part it is he's saying no to. I invite the member to repeat his question, and the minister will, if he continues to give the answer no, indicate which part. Chris Hipkins.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Does she believe that the role of ministers is to simply sign off whatever recommendations officials present to them? Or does their role extend to questioning that advice and making sure officials have done their jobs properly? If so, does she believe that this government has executed that responsibility appropriately in signing off on the implementation of Novopay before the results of system testing were even known?
The Honourable Craig Foss.
Mr Speaker, on behalf of the Minister of Education, no to the first part.
Supplementary question, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, did she sign off on the decision on the 5th of June to go live with Novopay? If so, why has she tried to create the impression that it was all Craig Foss's fault?
The Honourable Craig Foss.
Mr Speaker, on behalf of the Minister of Education, I reject the second part of that question.
Parliamentary question, Mr Speaker.
Chris Hipkins.
Mr Speaker, did she sign off on the decision on the 5th of June to go live with Novopay?
The Honourable Craig Foss.
Mr Speaker, on behalf of the Minister of Education, I received recommendations from the Associate Minister of Education regarding his accepting of recommendations from Novopay and the Ministry to go live on Novopay.
Point of order, the Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Mr Speaker, it was a very straight question. Did she sign off? And we still haven't had a yes or no. We took advice, but we didn't get a yes or no on whether she signed it off.
I think the member makes a valid point. That last question was a very clear, particular question. Did the Minister sign off on the Novopay going live? And the point's well made that whether or not the Minister took advice doesn't answer whether or not she signed off on it. The Honourable Craig Foss.
Thank you, Mr Speaker.
Point of order, the Honourable Cherry Brown.
Depend entirely on what the delegation leader says.
But the Minister is totally capable of answering that.
Well, okay.
The order.
Pretend you're an adult.
Well, it's just that members are meant to treat each other in this House with some courtesy. And okay, if I provoke the honourable member and he responds that way, I guess that's my fault. But I was actually assisting the honourable member, and therefore a little courtesy might be a little more appropriate. The Honourable Craig Foss.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. On behalf of the Minister of Education, yes, I received advice from the Associate Minister, who followed advice, as outlined earlier, to go ahead, go live with Novopay. The answer is yes.
No, the Minister said the answer is yes. The Minister said the answer is yes. And I believe that brings to a close questions for oral answer. I call on Government Order of the Day.